from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "There will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. And on earth nations will be in dismay, perplexed by the roaring of the sea and the waves. People will die of fright in anticipation of what is coming upon the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. But when these signs begin to happen, stand erect and raise your heads, because your redemption is at hand. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life, and that day catch you by surprise like a trap. For that day will assault everyone who lives on the face of the earth. Be vigilant at all times, and pray that you have the strength to escape the tribulations that are imminent and to stand before the Son of Man." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord. Good afternoon, Corpus Christi. It is indeed good to see you as we begin our season of Advent, and Advent marks the beginning of the church's year. And during this year of 2019, Year of Grace, we will be hearing primarily from the evangelist Luke. It is the year of Luke, though John weaves in and out throughout the year as well, as he does every year. So we'll come to know Jesus through the pen of the evangelist Luke. Now, my father says that I'm a very impatient person, and I agree. And there's probably no one that knows me so well more than my parents. So he says, "Tim, you are really an impatient person." And I say, yes and no. Yes, I am very impatient personally. But in terms of being a pastor and a shepherd and a priest, I am very patient. Very patient. But anyway, on a personal level, I became aware of my lack of patience on Friday, because on Friday it was time for me to renew my license. So I spent the morning at the DMV, okay? And like many experiences around DMV or blood work or those kinds of things, if you don't have an appointment, you're going to wait a while, okay? And patience can definitely be pushed. But anyway, what I noticed was how people were waiting. Because Advent is going to be about how we wait. How we wait. And I noticed some people had conversation. Some people spent their time on their phones. Others, especially the older ones that weren't quite technologically savvy, had their crossword puzzles, their hardbound books, or Sudoku. But everybody had a way of passing the time. They had a way of waiting. Advent is waiting. Advent is about waiting patiently for the coming of the Lord. So Advent is a time for us to think about how we wait. Because I've got news for you. Waiting is a hallmark of our Christian life. It's 24/7. Wait upon the Lord. It's only during the season of Advent that the church is, shall we say, more intentional around how we wait. But it's a hallmark of our Christian life. So how do we wait? Well, first of all, let's just go back to Advent and what it means. Advent means coming. So we are preparing for 3 comings. 2 that we are very familiar with. One is we are preparing ourselves for the historical coming of Jesus Christ. The Jesus of history. The one who has come to us. And we celebrate that on Christmas Day. The Jesus of history. And we're familiar with the Jesus of Majesty, because we all know that the Lord will come again. The old memorial acclamation. Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. And matter of fact is we have really a very apt description of that. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So we know that Jesus will come again. The Jesus in majesty. So history, majesty. But the third coming, which is really the in-between, which is really the in the meantime. And that is the Jesus who comes to us in mystery. In mystery. And exactly what do I mean by that? Well, I think the challenge for us is to become more conscious of how God comes to us in our everyday life. To become more conscious of how God comes to us in our everyday life. So, I'm going to kind of break that open for you. Because my second coming, actually it's not my second coming, the Lord's second coming is when He calls me. So I will be 6 foot in the grave before the Lord comes again in majesty. But the Lord who comes in majesty in my personal life is the one who says it's time for you to join me. And that's our second. And the Lord says, come and join me. Known as our death, our passing away into a new life. But in the meantime, how do we wait? How do we wait patiently? And so the very first thing, and this is your homework assignment, so I'm going to just put it out there, a way of becoming more aware of the presence of the Lord in your life, is let's think about the responsorial song. Our responsorial song today, to you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. So what I want you to do is I want you to complete. To you, O Lord, I lift up my soul. Okay? To you, O Lord, I lift up my life. To you, O Lord, I lift up my family. To you, O Lord, I lift up Corpus Christi. To you, O Lord, I lift up my staff. To you, O Lord, I lift up my co-workers. To you, O Lord, I lift up the DMV. Okay? To you, O Lord, I lift up everyone here in the Mission Viejo Mall. Huh? To you, O Lord, I lift up this line that I'm standing in, waiting to purchase an item. In other words, as you go through these days of Advent, make that a prayer. To you, O Lord, I lift up my husband, my wife, my children. I lift up my supervisor. I lift up my doctor and his staff. You know, make that just a part of your day-to-day prayer. Many of the elders among us, we were raised, our parents and our grandparents said to us, offer it up, offer it up. You didn't like something, offer it up. And you know, during this time of Advent, there are some people who are really hurting. You know, there's this perception that it's the happy holidays. It's the perception that everybody is happy, but I'm not. And so there must be something wrong with me while everybody goes about and that they're happy. So not everyone, for some people, this is not a joyful time of the year. Lift up. To you, O Lord, I lift up my sadness. To you, O Lord, I lift up my loneliness. To you, O Lord, I lift up my grief, my sorrow. So wherever we are in our faith journey, I think a way that we can make the most of Advent, a way that Jesus can come to us in our day-to-day life, well, He does come to us in our day-to-day life, a way that we can be aware of His presence, is by just using today's responsorial song. To you, O Lord, I lift up, whatever. And all those things that we lift up, it's our soul, it's our life, you know. Pay real close attention to what I call the drop-in visitors, okay? What do I mean by the drop-in visitors? Okay, I'm going to give you an example. So on Friday, okay, at a certain point during the day, maybe it was when I was at the DMV, I can't remember exactly where, but my spiritual director from the seminary, Father Roy, came into my consciousness, my awareness. And I just go, wow, I haven't thought of him for years. I wonder how he's doing. I wonder what's happening at this moment. Maybe this is God's way of saying, pray. Pray for Father. Pray for him. So when you're driving, when you're just moving about and somebody comes into your consciousness, that's a drop-in visitor. That's Christ visiting you. And that's an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity for me to pray for the drop-in visitor. Okay, so that's one. The second is, I like what St. Paul says today. So if you go to your worship aid, our second reading, okay? And that is, he says, brothers and sisters, may the Lord make you increase and abound in love for one another and for all, just as we have for you. What Paul is saying is, first of all, Paul is affirming the community gathered in Thessalonica. And if he were standing today, he would be affirming us and our love for one another. We are Corpus Christi. We are the people of God. We care for one another. And then Paul encourages them, nonetheless, though you are pleasing God, you can do more. You can do even more. So as we go about the season of Advent, you know, everything all of a sudden, the heat gets turned up, huh? Everything goes on steroids. Baking, shopping, the list, the cards, the parties, the feast, and so on and so forth. All of that goes on steroids. So in the midst of all this activity, how do I abound in love? How do I grow in love? Well, maybe we can use these activities to bring our families together, to do them together as family, you know, to bake together, to cook together, to shop together, to decorate together, to build family unity, to build relationships. Okay? So Advent is about growing in love. So how do we prepare for the second coming, the cosmic Christ? He calls upon us. We are to wait upon the Lord. It's an active waiting. And there's nothing that's more active than love. Love is a verb, okay? There's nothing more active than love. And then finally, we have our gospel reading today. And that is, this is what we hear Jesus say. Now, he says this out of love because he wants all of us to be saved. He says, beware, beware. Okay? It's a word of warning. That your hearts do not become drowsy. Okay? Now, he also says, be vigilant. Well, to me, that's impossible. Okay? How do you live life on red alert 24/7? You know, living life on red alert 24/7, I'm going to collapse. I'm going to be exhausted, you know. But it's living life intentionally, doing the right thing, growing in love, and lifting up people in prayer. But he says, beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness. Now, I don't think that's a problem among us, but let's look at it metaphorically, okay? In other words, prepare and not get drunk. Get drunk on what? Drunk on the things of this passing world. On the things of this passing world. I love Christmas as much as anyone, okay? And I love the season as much as anyone. But let's remember that everything passes. And there are only two things that endure forever. That's the Word of God and people. and that relationships are the most important things. Because the things that we desire, advanced technology, upgrading, the latest, and a year from now, we're getting rid of it because we want something that's better. We're going to break it. It's going to pass on. We're going to wear it out. And the point is to have perspective. All of that is don't let that be the be and end all. All those things pass. But rather keep your eyes on the Lord, praying for one another, growing in love for one another. And then the final thing, and this one I would take literally, and this is always a challenge for me, and the anxieties of daily life. Beware that your hearts do not become drowsy, okay, from the anxieties of daily life. That perhaps resonates more with us than the words carousing and drunkenness, okay? The anxieties, how the anxieties that go around life really weigh us down. And the Lord is saying, have perspective. This too shall pass. Keep your eyes, on the kingdom. As St. Paul says, our citizenship is in heaven, and from it we also await a Savior. And the last thing that I would say, and it's very brief, as a way of preparing and waiting patiently, is as a parish we'll be celebrating the sacrament of reconciliation. Okay? And we'll be celebrating that on Tuesday, December the 18th. So that's 2 weeks from this Tuesday at 7 p.m. There'll be a number of priests here for confession. And probably where in our own lives, where we have to really exercise patient waiting, is around our own sins. Because oftentimes when we do go to confession, it's the same old, and that can be very frustrating to us. But the Lord just says, wait upon me, be patient, and wait upon me. So that's the weather report for this first Sunday of Advent. And I'm going to conclude the message right now with acknowledging a 50th wedding anniversary. And that would be Michael and Gloria Leslie. And I invite them to come forward so I may bless their 50th. What I like to say, I'm 36 years a priest. What I like to say is I've been very happy for 33 out of the 36 years. And the reason why I say that is we all know in life, we go through seasons. And sometimes some of those seasons are really tough. And so not all our life is all of that in baggage. Sometimes we make the choice to stay the course really during really tough seasons. So perhaps, now they may say, it's been 50 wonderful years, okay? And more power to them. But maybe they might say, all right, 48 out of the 50 have been really great, okay? And then the other two sprinkled out throughout 50 years, we did have those moments. But we thank you for making the choice to stay the course and for your love for one another. And as St. Paul says today, he expresses gratitude because you have grown in love, and he says, but you're not done. Continue to grow in love. So, here's a blessing. Lord God and Creator, we bless and praise your name. In the beginning, you made man and woman so that they might enter a communion of life and love. You likewise bless the union of Michael with Gloria, so that they might reflect the union of Christ with this church. Look with kindness on them today, amid the joys and struggles of their life. You have preserved the union between them. Renew their marriage covenant, increase your love in them, and strengthen their bond of peace, so surrounded by their family, they may always rejoice in the gift of your blessing. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. And you may show each other a sign of affection. You know, he wants it. You just said, make Notre Dame win. Okay? Let us continue with our prayer by saying the creed. Please stand.